How could I have known that the kid who helped me set up the coffee maker would come into my house, and I'd realize I'd left my toys and some very personal clothing on the couch? Let alone that everything would change after that moment. I was alone, but when I went to get that coffee maker, thanks to the guy at the store, I wouldn't be alone today. Who could have guessed that an inexperienced young man would cross my path and take things in such an unexpected direction? Let me tell you everything from the very beginning. I'm 60 years old, divorced for 15 years, and I've been living alone. Of course, I had my private moments and personal items, things just for me. In fact, I used them so often that I didn't even notice when I accidentally left them in plain sight in the middle of the living room. Maybe it was just a habit, or maybe it was my way of filling the void of loneliness. Either way, that morning felt completely normal. I only intended to buy a coffee maker and carry on with my day. But that young guy, Jake, changed everything when he offered to help. The moment I opened the door and let him step inside with the box, I had no idea that an ordinary day was about to turn into something extraordinary. Jake was 23, excited, warm, and full of energy as he stepped into my house with the coffee maker in hand. His eyes wandered across every corner of the room. That's when his attention landed on something, my toys and those personal pieces of clothing I'd left on the couch. I was so used to seeing them there that I hadn't even noticed. They looked like the most ordinary part of the house to me. Jake smiled lightly as he moved toward the living room and said, "You live alone, don't you?" There was a playful curiosity in his eyes. My face turned bright red. It happened so suddenly and embarrassingly that I didn't know how to handle it. Someone was only supposed to come and set up the coffee maker. After all, I didn't share these private parts of my life with anyone. My loneliness was my own, and I never intended to project it onto someone else. "Jake, please let's pretend you didn't see any of this," I said, my voice trembling slightly. It felt like everything I wanted had suddenly fallen apart. Jake looked at me and smiled. "Whatever you say," he replied, "but you know these things aren't exactly easy to overlook. They kind of demand attention, just like you do." That made me feel even more flustered. I slowly turned my head away and muttered, "Jake, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications for more stories like this. I know you won't be able to resist leaving a comment after hearing this one. Let's chat about it below. I can't wait to hear your thoughts." But with his usual warm and genuine demeanor, he kept going. "It's completely natural to have these kinds of things when you're living alone," he said, his eyes now sparkling with a different kind of light. "We all have our needs, you know, but sometimes this kind of stuff just isn't enough, is it?" I could feel the subtle emphasis in his words at the end. It was as if he was trying to connect with me, to reach out in a way that felt both bold and gentle. Our eyes locked for a few seconds, and in that moment, something began to spark between us, a pull, an unspoken attraction, a quiet intensity. I could feel Jake's warm gaze on me, and with every passing moment, we were getting closer. Every word he said somehow touched my soul, and that's when I realized what I was feeling was different. Jake said, "I noticed it the first time you came to get the coffee maker," with a strange spark in his eyes. "You gave me a feeling I've never had before." I paused for a moment before replying. What could I even say? My feelings were all over the place, but resisting this pull felt nearly impossible. "You did the same for me," I said with a small smile. "Otherwise, I'd have never accepted your offer to help and let you into my house." I said that, but inside, I knew I felt something deeper. Jake had gotten under my skin somehow, his body, his demeanor, his way of talking, everything about him so relaxed, so charming. It was getting harder to keep my eyes from betraying what I felt. There was a bit of silence before I finally said, "I've been in these jeans and this shirt all day, they're suffocating me. Trying to ease the tension, I'm going to go change into something more comfortable." "Make yourself at home." Jake's gaze lingered on me. I tried to look away, even just for a second, but I couldn't. I felt so drawn to him, the space between us was shrinking by the second. Upstairs, I slipped into a sleek, figure-hugging spaghetti strap dress. I touched up my makeup just a bit and made my way to the kitchen. But as I came down, I noticed Jake standing by the living room door. His eyes, whether intentionally or not, were on me. For a moment, I stood there hesitating, letting my thoughts run wild. All right, I thought to myself, your intentions are pretty clear. You're like hitting the jackpot for me, so let's roll with it. I thought that to myself, then acted like I didn't notice him watching me, and stepped toward him. Jake, I said in a playful tone, are you single? Got a girlfriend, or do you spend your nights alone? As I looked at him, a spark flared up inside me. We were so close now that every word, every move, every glance seemed to carry a deeper meaning. When I saw the excitement and shy curiosity in his eyes, a smile crept onto my face. If you finish setting up the coffee maker, how about we make some coffee? I said, barely noticing the slight tremble in my voice. And let's chat, you can tell me all about yourself. As I moved closer to him, I felt a warmth building inside me, every little thing about him pulling me in. Jake sat down on a chair, but he kept shifting, struggling to get comfortable. I, on the other hand, took another step and pulled my chair right next to his. As I slid it firmly under me, my skirt inched up just a bit. Centimeters, but I was completely aware of it. Jake's eyes traveled up, stopping just short of meeting mine. I could feel how attentive he was, how genuine. I glanced at him, trying to gauge this new closeness, and smiled. Crossing my legs casually, I rested an arm on the back of my chair. Did you get impatient waiting for this? I teased, trying to add a playful vibe to the moment, but the tension between us quietly kept rising. Jake, slightly flustered but never breaking eye contact, asked, how old are you? His voice wavered slightly between surprise and admiration. I thought you were 50. A sparkle lit up in my eyes. Did he really think I was 50? That was interesting and oddly flattering. I couldn't help but smile. Do you like 50-year-olds better? I teased, raising an eyebrow as I studied him. Each word, each moment between us brought us closer together, fueled by the heat of the moment. The look of surprise in his eyes showed he seemed so taken with me. No, that's not what I meant, he said a little shyly. You look so young and beautiful. His words echoed in my head, and a warmth spread through me, but at the same time, I felt a bit uneasy being this close. Now, taking another step felt, ow. There was a moment of silence between us. I took a deep breath and asked the question, do you have a girlfriend? Are you alone? How do you spend your nights alone? These were questions I was eager and a little nervous to hear. Jake lowered his voice, his eyes locking onto mine. I'm alone, he said. At that moment, I truly believed he was alone, but it felt like the kind of loneliness he didn't really want. We looked at each other for a while, and I knew he could feel the intensity in my gaze. Something shifted inside me as I waited, my feelings started to take shape quickly, and I knew I had to make a move. That's not how tonight's going to go, I said, my voice a little firmer, more determined. My eyes slid back to him, and every word I spoke carried weight. I knew in that moment everything was about to change. Jake, come, I said, my voice lower than usual but definitely more inviting. With my eyes, I motioned toward the room with the bed and turned without hesitation, sure he would follow. I heard his footsteps behind me, his breathing a little quicker now. When we entered the bedroom, Jake stopped near the door. His shoulders were a bit tense, but his expression was focused, expectant. I turned to face him, and on his face, I saw a mix of hesitation and excitement. Jake, are you ready? I asked, my tone calm and steady. I stepped closer and added with a small smile, I've got experience, as you can tell. Relax, no need to get nervous. I placed my hand gently on his shoulder as I approached. Even that small touch seemed to ease some of his tension, but it also made the excitement in him grow. In that moment, Jake's youthful energy met the confidence and decisiveness I'd gained over the years. I slowly slid the straps of my dress off my shoulders, the fabric brushed against my skin. As it fell to the floor, I felt Jake's eyes on me. There was a mix of awe, curiosity, and desire. Something stirred inside me, but my expression stayed calm. I moved closer to him, the silence between us almost forming a bond. My fingertips lightly touched his cheek, and then I waited for him to make his move. Jake hesitated for a second, but finally, he leaned toward me. I could feel the determination and excitement in his gaze. His hand slowly rested on my waist, and his face came closer to mine until his lips finally met mine. His kiss carried the bravery of youth and a hint of inexperience, but that innocence only drew me in more. I pulled back slowly and made my way toward the bed. I let myself sink onto it with deliberate, unhurried movements. The cold surface against my skin made me shiver for a moment, heightening the anticipation inside me. I looked over at Jake. He was still standing there, unsure of what to do next. "Jake, come here," I said, my voice soft but beckoning. I ran my fingers across the bed, pointing to the empty spot beside me. "Lie down, there's nothing to be afraid of." Jake slowly moved closer and carefully lay down beside me. It was like we were both holding our breaths, the air in the room feeling heavier by the second. I turned to him, placed my hand gently on his chest, and asked softly, "Have you ever thought about this moment, imagined it?" Jake kept his eyes on me without flinching. "More than just imagined it," he said, his voice low and a little shaky, "but I never thought it could actually happen." At that moment, all our doubts were pushed aside. We were connecting, not just with our bodies but with our emotions too. Neither of us knew where this was going, but there was one thing I was certain of: the excitement I felt with Jake was something I had been searching for. Lying next to him, the thrill inside me turned into a burst of courage. I sat up slightly at the edge of the bed, fixing my gaze on Jake as I slowly stood in front of him, leaning slightly toward him from the head of the bed. My eyes locked with his, capturing the mix of surprise and anticipation in his expression. "Jake," I said, my voice soft but resolute, "tonight, neither of us is alone." Jake swallowed hard, never looking away. His silence told me he understood the weight of what I'd said. His hands were gripping the edge of the bed tightly, but his eyes had grown braver. Slowly, I leaned toward his face, holding his cheeks gently with my hands. "Let's just live this moment tonight," I whispered, bringing my lips closer to his. "Don't question anything, don't fear anything." Jake's breathing quickened, but he didn't pull away, not even for a second. In that moment, we were both escaping our loneliness, finding comfort in each other's presence. Jake's breathing had quickened, his eyes seemed to be trying to capture every detail of the moment, like he wanted to etch it into his mind. He hesitated briefly, then lifted his hands to my waist with a mix of boldness. The uncertainty that initial hesitancy melted into an intense desire. I couldn't control my own breathing either, but I could feel the gravity of the moment deep within me. "Jake," I whispered as I gently caressed his face with my hands. "This feeling is so much, and it's beautiful." Jake didn't look away, replying in a voice that was deep yet trembling with warmth, "I feel the same, but isn't this all happening so fast? This feeling I have, it's so strong and it's so beautiful. You can probably guess I've never done anything like this before." A smile spread across my face. I leaned in closer and placed a soft kiss on his forehead. "Jake, sometimes life is better when you don't overthink. Just feel the moment and never stop," I said with a reassuring tone. Jake paused for a moment, but then slid his hand slowly from my waist upward, pulling me closer to him. As our breaths mingled and the space between us disappeared, I knew this moment could be a turning point in our lives. It didn't take long, and Jake, breathless and fully giving in, let himself go just like I told him. He didn't stop, and it felt incredible. As I lay beside him afterward, he looked so happy, like he'd finally let go of all his tension. Jake's strong arms were wrapped tightly around me, holding me close. My head rested on his chest, where I could hear the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. The rhythmic sound was both soothing and strangely exhilarating. Without realizing it, my fingers were gently tracing patterns across his chest. Jake took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Brittany, this thing I'm feeling right now, I've never felt so calm and at peace before." His voice was a mix of honesty and surprise. I smiled but didn't meet his gaze, still resting my head on his chest. "Really?" I murmured. "Yeah, really," he continued, gently sliding one of his hands to my back, pulling me closer. "All my life, I've been chasing something. I never thought I'd stop to enjoy a moment like this, but now being here with you, it just makes everything feel worth it." His words warmed me from the inside out. While I lay there listening to the steady rhythm of his breaths, I replied, "Jake, just being with you makes me feel something I haven't felt in so long, special." Jake ran his fingers through my hair, a soft smile playing on his lips. "I guess we've given each other exactly what we needed," he said thoughtfully. I lifted my head slightly to look at him. The honesty and relief on his face said it all. "Then let's just leave it like this," I said. "Let's soak up this moment." Jake nodded slowly, agreeing without saying a word. We just stayed there, wrapped up in each other, letting the warmth of the moment surround us. Outside, the quiet and dim light felt like they existed just for us. Resting my head back on Jake's chest, I closed my eyes and let the peaceful moment wash over me. That's when a thought crept into my mind. I started imagining asking him to stay here with me, to make this house. Quiet corners and lonely nights. Something more alive with his presence. The idea of adding him to my world made everything seem brighter. Fuller, of course. I didn't know where that would lead us, what kind of exciting days or deeper connections were ahead. But one thing I knew for sure, our story wasn't ending here. This was just the beginning. So stay tuned. If you made it this far, I know my story must have struck a chord with you. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss it. Hit that follow button, turn on notifications, and don't forget to drop a comment about this story. I can't wait to hear what you think, so let's chat in the comments. Your support means the world to me.